So I've never been much of a manga reader, and even my anime taste rarely goes beyond the basic bro stuff like Bleach, Attack on Titan, or Yu-Gi-Oh!
You never saw this coming! I summoned Pot of Greed to draw 3 additional cards from my deck!
That's not what it does!
They say you either die a fantasy booktuber or you live long enough to become a One Piece channel. With that said, over the last few years I've come to fall in love specifically with horror manga. You likely all know about Junji Ito, and for good reason. He's been called the Stephen King of Japanese storytelling, and I think that's fair, although you could easily say that Stephen King is the Junji Ito of Western storytelling. Their styles of horror are wildly different, Stephen having that isolated Midwestern vibe, while Junji's stories are much more bizarre and Lovecraftian. They are similar though in that they dominate their own demographics within the horror genre. This video is not about Junji though, there's more than enough of those already on YouTube. This video is about a lesser known but hauntingly creepy little manga by Masasumi Kakizaki called Hideout. What's shaking? My name's Cam, welcome back to another video. I make videos every single week on fantasy and horror books, so if that's your kind of thing, then stick around, or else. You probably don't know this about me, but I'm very claustrophobic, so even the thought of putting a dark cave on the green screen behind me, it literally creeps me out. It kind of gives me the heebie-jeebies. Hideout is a psychological horror manga that, in my opinion, starts off pretty strong before plateauing a little bit for a considerably satisfying and disturbing ending. I think it had a lot of potential that it perhaps didn't live up to, but I did like it and I am glad that I read it, and it only took about 15 minutes to get through anyway, so there's not a whole lot to lose. It's only like 9 chapters long. Be warned in advance, it can get pretty dark. There will also be some mild spoilers. The story starts with Sichi and Miki, a couple that are on holiday trying to mend a gaping wound in their relationship. Sichi seems genuinely passionate about them starting over, but it's clear that he's a pushover and his wife has no respect for him. She's constantly berating him and is completely disinterested in doing any fixing when it comes to their relationship. Sichi decides to take Miki to a waterfall despite some dreadful wet weather, and during the car ride we learn 3 important things. Their son Jun is dead, Miki blames her husband, and her husband's idea of starting over doesn't include her. Her mental abuse has pushed Sichi to the edge, and when she once again blames him for the death of their son, he goes over. He hits her over the head with a wrench and chases her into a cave. This is where we get the fantastically ominous panel saying, "Looking back, I only had one regret, and it's the fact that I followed her." Sichi catches his wife, finally saying everything he always held back, while Miki begs for her life. With no amount of hesitation, he lifts the wrench and he finishes the job, and that is when he hears a noise behind him. That is the first chapter of Hideout, and it's the premise for the story going forward. I will discuss a bit more of the story, but I want to take a break to talk about why I love this opening so much. And also, just so you know, there will be some more explicit spoilers from this point on. I've said a lot on this channel that psychological horror is my favorite subgenre of horror, and reading this was a real nostalgia trip for me. A story about an estranged man and his wife with a tragic backstory involving a child was what inspired me to write my horror novel, Welcome Descent. This is still a drastically different story, but there are some really visceral similarities. Similarities that I connected with because in writing this book, I had to really kind of think deep about a lot of the elements involved. I'm sorry to self-plug, by the way, but I am a self-published author. I kind of have to, and this literally is the perfect time for me to do so. If you are curious about my psychological horror book, Welcome Descent, you can find a link in the description below, or you can just search for Welcome Descent on Amazon. I love horror manga, and one of the main reasons why is because of the art style. Horror manga feels like the perfect medium between horror films and television, movies, even animation, and horror novels, which personally I think do a much better job of showing us what's going on inside the characters' minds, which is very important for psychological horror. The art is very often colorless and hyper-detailed. That's why Junji Ito has such a recognizable style. It's the same for Hideout. It's dark, so dark that sometimes it's difficult, maybe even impossible to see what's even happening. But in a story about a cave where something is hiding in the black, it works. The close-ups we get of characters' faces are chilling. It's like looking at something that we shouldn't be seeing. Seichi discovers that he's managed to get lost within the cave, and somewhere in the dark, something is following him. First he spots a child, deformed and half-starved, and a little later he meets the real danger, in this terrifying frame. Seichi's fight for survival becomes a lot more real once he is the prisoner of the cave-dwelling madman. In each chapter of Hideout, we see flashbacks to his past, taking us through the death of his son and the fallout that it left on his marriage. We're led to believe that before the death of June, they were a happy, perfect family. But something that Hideout does that I love is it takes this trope and it starts to unravel it the more we go on. The more desperate that Seichi gets, the more the truth shows itself. In some way, he and his wife were monsters before their son even fell from the balcony. The flashbacks are paralleled against the present, Seichi's begging for help now being contrasted against his begging for help when he was broke and desperate to support his family. I won't tell you how the story ends, but it's very likely that you won't see it coming. I think on the surface, Hideout is a creepy cross between maybe The Hills Have Eyes and The Descent, but if you look a bit deeper, if you pay a bit more attention to the characters involved, you start to see some things that will make you even more uneasy. I'll be honest, after chapter 1, I really was expecting this to be a bit more scary, maybe even a bit more violent and dark. Psychological horror focuses more on a character's mental decline, sure, but I also think Masasumi could have done a bit more in regards to being graphic and shocking. I did really enjoy it though, so if it sounds like your kind of thing, then go ahead, check it out. And if you know any really disturbing horror manga, then please do let me know in the comments below. The more unknown, the better. I likely know all about the Junji Ito ones. I make videos every single week on horror and fantasy books, so if that's your kind of thing, then I would love it if you stuck around. With that said, thank you for watching, especially for watching through the whole video. You're my favorite. Hopefully, I'll see you in the next one. Catch ya.